Good morning. This is a video discussion of some of the reactions and comments that I have after having gone through all of the editorial essay drafts. Please remember as you go forward through editing and revising that there are 4 goals that the editorial essay project had. The first of those goals was to have a clear focus on audience awareness. This is a goal we've had before. In fact, really it's a goal of the entire course. Given the fact that we're writing in what's supposed to be a journalistic news style, it is particularly important to think about not only what the audience knows and what they don't know, but also the fact that we've got to write in a very clear, simple way, given that the journalistic news audience sometimes begins with children as young as 4th grade. After that, we want to begin practicing argumentation, particularly the early stages of it, in which our ability to point out a problem to be solved or issue to be better understood is very, very important. Following that, we need to make sure that we consider the effects of the problem or issue on 3 cultural groups, and this is another important part of persuasion. We lack the ability to be persuasive until we can explain to our audience exactly why it is that they need to care about the problem or issue we're discussing. Finally, the last and probably most important goal of the editorial essay project is to work closely with language and structure to keep both things simple and direct. And really, this is another overarching goal of the entire semester. In terms of writing, really, this is one of my main goals, both for the students I teach and also for the writing that I do. There are 5 specific elements of news journalism that the essay uses, and again, knowing what these are will help us to go forward with the editing and revision process. Firstly, we want to make sure that we're using short paragraphs with specific, straightforward points. If you think about the way that any paragraph in news journalism looks, it is quite short, and that's because of the fact that when people go to read news journalism, they want to be able to read things very quickly and to not only recognize the words, but also use the organization of the paragraphs as a way of expecting exactly where they'll find new points being made. Following that, another element of news journalism that the essay uses is plain, direct language, and this comes, yet again, from news journalism that's written in a way that allows people, regardless of their background, to understand what's being said. As long as you've got a basic grasp of the English language, something written as news journalism should be able to come across to anyone who reads it. After that, another element of news journalism that this essay is supposed to use is a graphical element to help get the point of the speech across. This could be a picture, this could be a graph, this could be a chart, this could be any number of things. In fact, I did receive a couple of drafts that had cell phone pictures taken of things in the author's life that somehow represent the problem, and those worked quite well too. The point is that this could be a lot of different things. Just make sure that you've included it. Another important element of news journalism that this essay uses is timeliness, established by a discussion of local concerns or events. We have to be able to show that the problem that we're discussing is one that not only currently exists, but one that we need to be concerned about. Otherwise, again, we're not really going to be able to be persuasive in our appeals. Finally, and this works just as well as being borrowed from news journalism as it is to a good writing concern, we've got to be aware of our length. The goal here set out by the assignment guidelines is for length to come in at between 500 and 600 words. Being able to control one's length is just as important in news journalism as it is academic essay writing. We need to have a good idea of exactly how many words we use are absolutely necessary versus those that we could cut if we had to. Now, the most common problem that I found as I was going through the essays was not fulfilling the assignment. The first problem that tended to signal this was there being no clear audience awareness or direction for the essay. Oftentimes, this was simply an essay written about an issue in general without really being directed at a Western New York audience or without really having any direction in terms of a recommended solution. Following that, and really this is a more specific version of the first point, the next issue that caused the essay draft to not fulfill the assignment was it not being directed at a Western New York audience. This was particularly problematic where the issue chosen was discussed in terms of other places in the United States, but not here. After that, another way in which drafts sometimes did not fulfill the assignment was when they didn't look at a specific problem or did not offer up a specific solution. Often this was because multiple problems and solutions were mentioned but not developed. Following that, sometimes the assignment wasn't fulfilled because the draft was actually about another editorial article itself rather than actually being one. Finally, the last reason that the assignment wasn't fulfilled, and this was the one that I encountered most often, was that wording was simply overly complex. This often happened, I think, because we were going out to the internet, doing some research, and finding sources, and then quoting those just a little bit too directly without putting them in our own words. And that could be a really big problem, because if we can't paraphrase the thing, the chances are good we don't fully understand it. Other common problems included exactly what I've just been talking about. Again, that's wording that comes from an outside source without adequate citation or quotation. Another common problem was blanket generalizations, in which the author of the essay talked about a large group of people as all being the same way or doing the same thing. Clearly, this is unfair. Sometimes these were vague pronouns. In an essay in which we're pointing out that there's a problem somewhere, we have to be very careful about the pronouns we use because we're constantly talking about someone either doing or not doing something that causes a problem. We have to be sure that we're pointing to the right person and not being vague. Other common problems I encountered had to do with citations. Bear in mind, we're writing this as though it's going to be in news journalism, and so parenthetical citations just don't work. Rather than including those, we want to use verbal citations in text instead. And what this means is a phrase like according to rather than including the parenthetical. Following this, sometimes I found that the problem being addressed at the beginning of the draft wasn't the same as the one at the end, and this could be problematic because it means that the reader simply isn't certain what the main idea was. Lastly, and this is something that I found myself saying in a lot of cases, the problem and solution really both needed to be clear by the end of the introduction. Otherwise, your reader will not know what it is they're reading about or why it is that they encounter the points that they do. This is a necessary consideration for everything from unity to coherence to basic focus and assignment fulfillment too.